we come, our institution, Antonio Nuñez Jimenez Foundation, from Humanity and Nature. It's an NGO, it's part of the Cuban civil society. Yes, they are a Cuban civil society in Cuba. Sometimes people think that they are not a civil society with other standards, other way to work, and we are the more important environmental, social, and cultural institution NGO in Cuba. Was created in 1994. Our founder president was Antonio Nuñez Jimenez. Antonio Nuñez Jimenez was one of the last Cuban encyclopedists, the first Cuban that was in both poles, person that studied all the Cuban geography, everything, landscape, all cave, the sea, and at the same time he studied a lot of different other regions in the planet. He developed a lot of expedition over the world, and Amazonas River. Expedition Amazonas River was the more important because it was 1.5 years exploring all the Amazonas and Caribbean watersheds from Misahuallin in Ecuador to Havana, 1 year canoeing in 5 canoes. And like you see, there was a person that included in one person the researcher that liked to be on the field work, but at the same time he wrote a lot. He died at 76 years old, and he wrote more than 80 books. Sometimes when I asked him, hey, Nuñez, how do you do that? How do you write so many books? And he told me, it's very easy. I said, wow. And he asked me, for you, it's okay to write 1 page a day? And I said, yes, write 1 page a day, it's okay. He told me, if you have the discipline to write 1 page a day, at the end of the year, you have a book of 326 pages, and that's only, again, discipline. Then he created the foundation. He passed away in 1998 after his wife became the president, now his daughter. It's an institution that we work a lot in environmental education with different publics and with protecting areas and a lot of big work, mainly with environment, community, culture, and social things. And of course, in the last years, continue the tradition of Nuñez, because Nuñez always says that the research, the work of the foundation always should be updated and adapted of the Cuban situation. Because you know that there are some researchers and institutions that they keep some distance from what is happening in the country in their own researching. And the more important things, he always says, it's be doing what the country needs in each moment. It's because of that in the last years, in that year, he created a program that the name was Environment and Consumption, because he determined how important is the consumption standards for the environment, and he created that program. Now that program, it's the program that I did, that it's Responsible Economy and Consumption Program. That is the background of that. For me, it's very important that here at the Wilderness Center and Professor Mauricio Fon, with the support thanks to her, Rosalind Lopez, organized that a new debate. That's named that we assume it's important, and we'll be talking from 2 other different perspectives, from the perspective of the law, what is happening in Cuba, and the perspective of the communication. These 2, my colleagues, Yordanka Castillo and Gaby Pais, that she worked for FANCH for many years, you will complement. It's like a triangle of topics that will be open a new door to be talking about, and from a very positive perspective, with the truth, but thinking in what we have to do. What is the lacks, but what we have to do. It's not like a specific title, but the process that has been happening in Cuba the last year, and we describe after 2010, there are some social economical changes in Cuba that begin to develop a doorstep economy. And what the process, let's talk about what the process about from a doorstep economy to a green economy. And there this new debate where we are ready now, there are some words, some topics that we need assume from the law perspective and communication perspective, those points. It's responsibility, consumption, and natural resources in the future of Cuba. Just it's an open discussion, a very new debate, like the title of the panel says, and we'll be talking about that. But in Cuba, a big question now, that is a question for all countries, but for Cuba, we have the possibility now to do things in the right way. But that is a question that normally our friends, our economist friends, don't ask in themselves. And we, people that we work from environmental economy, responsible economy, we have to present that questioning ourselves in order to develop new projects and new things. How to have prosperity without poverty? We need prosperity, of course, but we have to keep all the social welfare in Cuba, all that things. How to have well-being without a large income gap, and to protect the environment while achieving a high level of development. Let's talk about that, how different practical idea and project from different perspectives, and I will be telling you what we are thinking on that. In general, information that for sure all of you know very well is that Cuba's centralizing economy model is exhausted. The average annual growth in the last year has fallen from 9% from 2004 to 2007 to 20.1% from 2008 to 2016. The fiscal deficit, it's more than 10 millions in 2008, and the term of trade deficit increased by 35% in 2008 and another 50% in 2009. That is a general information to know that really the economy in Cuba is not in good situation. But that problem just push us to be more creative, more innovative, not using the same standard of other models. There a culture, in those years, a culture of entrepreneurship, the private sector have been growing very rapidly from 100,000 self-employed in 2008. Already now we have more than 500,000 of self-employed. Just now there a moment that will be reducing by other not so well-thinking measure, but we'll see what happens, because now they are reducing the license, they want to reduce in the private sector, but that is not a topic for now. There have been increasing a lot. The new licenses have been granted the private enterprise or the private entrepreneur. What we have, we in Cuba, we have a minimum foreign influence that is good, a minimum global market influence, or established consumerist ideologies. We have, it's not established the consumerist ideology. The country is economically speaking as close to a blank slate as one can get. That is true. That is an affirmation. In comparison to countries entrenched in a neoliberal economic system. That is just a frame to that we are affirming that is good things. This is, of course, an ideal situation for the development of alternative or new economy. That is what we are defending. Not imitate, the other standard, the other model. Bearing this in mind, how Cuba develops under what we have to resolve, under what values, using what means, and to reach what ends. That is the pivotal questions. What values, what means, and to reach what ends. That is our model, is what we have to design in ourselves. In the matter of what type of economic system, of course, all of you could have a proposal. We have a lot of proposal option that it's there. To start, Cuba has very limited natural resources. You have to know, I always explain that Cuba is not a rich country. We have no gold, we have no oil, we have to the only things that we have is happiness. And sometimes, it's shaking body, it's difficult to keep happy. It's true, Manolo, no? You know that. Thanks, Manolo, to be here. 15 years ago, more than 15 years ago, my first talk here in Building Center, he was here. Yeah. You know, a long time ago. Thanks, Manolo. To start, Cuba, like you know, have limited natural resources. Globally, we have reached the consensus that we cannot sustain the unfair global production and consumption patterns of current without also experiencing the environmental effects. That is a fact. The case of Cuba development likewise cannot afford to push aside the environmental implications of short-sighted economic decisions. Cuban natural resources must be used responsibly to ensure their viability and existence for future generations. Especially potable water and domestic energy sources are very constraining. That Cuba 2 years ago have the drought season more deep in the last 100 years. And what we have to do, that will repeat again and again. It's hard to say. The only way to have a water balance in Cuba in a good situation is with hurricane. Hurricane, it's destroy a lot of things, but it's the only event that gets full all the water reservoir. In Cuba, the focus that government places on social equality and the provision of social programs would undoubtedly clash with an unregulated market economy, the tendency to create inequality, distributed wealth and opportunity. Of course, Cuba should to continue the idea to keep all the social welfare, to give all the good, the important outputs that we had in the last 60 years. Respect for its environment and its natural resources will therefore be crucial to the creation of sustainable economy. That's important, environment. We need to combine that. This same talk, I'm talking and doing practical projects to demonstrate that. And instead of relying on any pre-existing economic system, the country will need to innovate. We were talking about that before, and I'm again totally of or imitate the China model, like some economic friends propose, or Vietnam model, or taking other. Maybe we'll take some element, but the history of Cuba in the last 100 years is unique. For the good way or the bad way, but it's unique. And we need just to design our own model. But design our own model, design the graphics, math model, not only reading. We need to just express that in some graphics. And a big question for us, it's possible to develop the economy with responsible consumption in Cuba? What do you think, Mauricio? It's possible to develop the Cuban economy? You are a well knower of a Cuban economy with responsible consumption in Cuba? My personal opinion that yes, but because Cuba, the future of Cuba will depend a lot of what kind of consumer we Cuban will be in the future. For sure, nobody here of all the very important professor, not like me, but that he bring here to talk. Nobody talk that the future of Cuba depends of what kind of consumers will be in the future, and what kind of participatory strategy we will be participating in social economical decision process, how we redefine our participatory strategy process, and that everything depends of sustainable development from legal perspective and the communication. We'll see some graphic here. It's the only possibility, just sustainable development, the only possibility to implement the idea of a possible harmonic interaction between the economical, financial, productive, and mercantile system, the interaction of those systems with biological, human, and social systems, looking at a real protection of natural resources and the exercise of socioeconomic development on a safe and durable basis. We have to do that. That is a small graphic that have the trademark copyright many years ago. It's mine. That is just represented. I'm engineering. I'm engineer, and I always need all translate to a graphic. That is like a factory of a new economy. That says green economy, but it's like a new economy. And that we have 3 tanks of raw material: investment, urban planning, and capacity building. Of course, some valves that control all that things, but it's just only to represent the different stages, and that we have to design small strategies of each of those engineering element to develop different sectors. Here, of course, it's communication strategy, fiscal action. It's both topics that we'll be talking about here for those young ladies, and into informal sector and government sector. And what is new economy? What is green economy? It's we need produce in the final time. We need obtain happiness, because believe me, not only your founding fathers, but our people need to pursue for happiness, and because we Cuban we need to be happy. And just developing that new debate, it's important that we assume that we Cuban need to be happy people, and it's because of that we are talking about sustainable development, but not like abstract. See, it's in practical actions. We recognize the imminent need to assume also with the economic policy recommended essential aspects such as energy model and the use of fuels. We need one energy model. Still in Cuba, they are not a well-defined energy model. There are some already now with a renewable source of energy. They are a good plan, but it's not only produce energy, it's how we will use energy. They are not a culture to save energy. More of mining to reach those levels of development in short term. We need to define it. It's need to be clear of that. The participation of soil and water in the rebirth of agriculture. Our friend from SEC, Professor, one of the economists, specialists on agriculture, Armando Nova, always we have a big discussion. I say, okay, those efficiency that you want to obtain producing our soil, our land, it's very good, but from where you will obtain the water? From where comes the water to produce those amount of production of tomatoes, those big tomatoes? The water. Normally, nobody knows. The forms of property on which this green development will stand. You know, those ideas will establish the optimum proportion of interaction between the market, foreign investment, the tax system, and the form of ownership. All those groups, the interaction between foreign investment, market, tax, and the forms of ownership, how they interact with expected pattern of consumption. It's our side of the problem. Production process, social behavior, environmental cost, local economics, energy autonomy, and appropriate financial system. That is very important, because for me, the only way to keep the planet, 3 minutes, perfect. The only way to keep the planet safe is change the economical system and mainly the financial system. There are a lot of actions, like promote local exchange system to increase the amount of goods and services, create financial mechanisms to support community-based structure and production and consumption, promote energy independence and other actions that can spur the growth of eco-neighborhoods, support an orderly transition from self-employed to small and medium enterprise. That is the thing that we all know. Transform production process and working culture, reform energy policies, expand, that's very important, expand the scope of tax system to ensure a sustainable development pathway rather than simply maintain the operation of the states. And there are some challenges. Renovating the economy, we were speaking about that. Renovating the economy without creating massive inequalities. That is, of course, creating a development model that features equity, efficiency, and low carbon energy. We can do. Be so weak and be in so bad position economically speaking, of course, it's a big problem, but it's an opportunity. Prevention, that is an important point, of lawlessness and corruption in the opening of the economy. Cuba today is a crossroads, I'm finishing, and must find its own direction. It's what we are doing with our project. The solution for our problems, I'm sure, cannot be found in Natch or Stiglitz. That is our challenge. We can only achieve economic growth while protecting the environment, but investing in future. That, of course, will require putting in place mechanisms that, while changing patterns of socioeconomic and social political inclusion, it's where I'm talking now about the redefining the community participation strategy. We also train people in responsible pattern of consumption. The aim should be to achieve a society that strengthens and valorizes through inclusion national accounts, social services as well as ecosystem services, and protect nature and biodiversity through an integrated social economical approach. Of course, we have to work looking at analogy, not more now more than before, not at differences. And just finishing, the past knowledge and past just the power of no generation, even you're confronting things, will be good. Thanks.
Go back to many of the issues posed by that presentation. Again, your starting point is your experience, 15 years with the river Almendares. So we want to go back at the end, referring his discussion to actual practices.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. Oh, my name is Yordanka Castillo.
Fuerte.
I'm sorry. I apologize for my English. So thank you to the Vietnam Center for inviting me. This is my second presentation in English. Well, I will talk about a general background about what we have in terms of legal framework in sustainable development in Cuba. The name of my presentation is a perception of the legal framework as a tool for sustainable development in Cuba. Why as a tool? Generally, people think that the law is only for to punish things, something like that. But the law is also for educate people, and this is my vision for give a new debate about this matter in Cuba. So I would like to share with you this general background, refer the present circumstance in Cuba, what we have in terms of legal framework in Cuba in this issue, what we have to work because the weakness of this legal framework. This is a resume about some important points that influence in the environmental protection and sustainable development today in Cuba. The Cuban government is called for an increase in the foreign investment, new opportunities and renewable fields related to natural research. It's a fact that the Cuban government is called for improve our economy, and we need foreign money. So we have to take care that this investment also take in account the environmental protection. Tourists in Cuba continue to grow. This has led to increased investment in all aspects of the infrastructure that support the provision of service to the tourist industry. We don't talk today about the ecological tourists in Cuba. In Cuba, generally, the tourism is a nature tourism and patrimony tourism. The development of the new private business sector in Cuba. Now, in the new project of the Constitution, the government proposed change who called for increase the private business in Cuba. Now we have a freeze in the private business in Cuba, but in the new project of the Constitution, the government is proposed some small business, new private property in Cuba. Decentralization of the administration. This means that the government now wants to empower the local government. For this government manage their own budget, their own economy, What we have now in the current context, and what is the weakness in this current context? We have a general legal framework that recognizes the protection of the environment and sustainable development. This is the main regulation, Cuban regulation, that talk about environmental protection and development, sustainable development. The Constitution have its content article that, in a general way, recognize the protection of the environmental protection and the sustainable development. We have an environmental law, the tax law, the foreign investment law that talk about a license for environmental license when you are applying for investing in Cuba, and in some way the criminal code. But in the other way, this framework remains flexible. It has not adapted to our current economic transformations. The regulation in this matter have not been adequately implemented with respect to foreign investment. We have the law, we have the environmental law, we have the foreign investment law that recognize that we have to apply for environmental license, but in the daily work of the government to approve this kind of investment, we don't have enough. We don't use it. We don't interpret like we don't use it. This tool for get a good result when you are when you talk about a foreign investment. The regulation that govern the private sector do not regulate these issues. We have in this private sector, we have a regulation for create all the license for create the private business, but in the case of private business, you don't have to apply some environmental license. For instance, we have in Cuba a lot of car wash, and a lot of business like this one, but you don't have to apply for environmental license when you are doing this kind of business, and the water is going to Although there is an article in the criminal code that protects against criminal activity in the case of action or omission which damage the environment, these regulations do not have a strong action. We don't recognize environmental crime in our code. We don't have this one. So, other thing that we have to do is Cuba is a signatory of international and regional agreements and treaties for the protection of the environment and sustainable development. But what's happened with the implementation and the development of this international law has been inadequate today. We don't have a process for became this international law national law. We don't have the tool for making and using in our country. Other fact is that Cuba has introduced regulation for international cooperation in the execution of projects for the protection of the environment, sustainable development, and environmental education. But this cooperation thus far is limited mostly to governmental institutions and a small handful private ones, like a Cuban civil society, like the foundation that I work with Yociel too. And other thing that I think that is very important to take in account about the weakness that we have in terms of legal framework, sustainable development in Cuba, is that Cuba follows a civil law system, and executors' interpretation and the enforcement of the law in a very strict sense. Cuba does not use practice and custom of case law to determine resolution of legal disputes. It's a civil law system. What does it mean that in our case that we are build a new country, that this is that the government wish to do with all this economic transformation. We don't have this law for regulate everything, and maybe if we use other practice, foreign practice in terms of environmental law, something like that, maybe we can do it better. So, in this I summarize this point that mostly this is that I think that we have to work hard, is adapt the Cuban legal framework to current economic transformation, provide a training in the interpretation and execution of this legal framework. I think that this is one of the most important, because we have this legal framework that I'm mentioning previous. There aren't many lawyers that practice environmental law in Cuba, and we don't have the tool that how can we use it, or can we interpret it and practice this legal framework. Establish a strict civil and criminal liability system. I think that we have to include in our crime code ecological crime, because this is a way to reaffirm that we are against with the environmental crime. So draw a strategy and legal framework for environmental protection and sustainable development based on comparative international law. That is a very good tool, because there are a lot of international treaty of other countries have more developed this matter in their country, and we can use this one in our country too, like an example. And make use of the international practice and not just the law in a strict sense. This is, I think that's very general summarize. I want to share that it's not very common in Cuba when we talk about environmental protection and sustainable development, include the legal vision about this topic. So there are a few environmental lawyers in Cuba. I remember that when I was studying my university, we don't have this subject like a main subject or something like that. Includes I start to involve in this matter when I start to work in the foundation, because I think that this is the way that I can help to the foundation to make things in terms sustainable development in Cuba. Also, that's from my profession as a lawyer. So this is my presentation.
Hello, my name is Gaby Pais. I work in communications for sustainable development. I used to work with Yociel and Yordanka at the Antonio Nuñez Jimenez Foundation, and that's where my passion for environmental communication started. And now I collaborate with them, but I also collaborate with other NGOs that work for sustainable development, especially the project called Third Paradise, which is an initiative of an Italian artist called Michelangelo Pistoletto. that promotes through art and creativity platforms where people can connect through their practices, people who are interested in sustainable development or have in their practices a responsible perspective and approach. People nowadays personalize everything. Their alarms are not the alarms that we used to listen. And that's what communication is supposed to be going, to personalize and try to make it of you, not from someone else importing it to you. So I want to talk about it a little bit, but first we have to get into context. What is communication in Cuba? So right now there's low awareness of sustainable development in communities in Cuba because there's the social conscience about sustainability is not high conscience. People don't talk about it much. It's not on their daily discourse. We also have a legacy of non-political communication because we had for many years there was non-advertisement in Cuba, so there was a big movement of political communication, but not in the creative business world. So it's also communication, but it doesn't use the same tools. So there's a kind of a gap there. There are, and this is a strength in Cuba, social structures for community-based actions. So whatever communications, traditional or non-traditional, we're thinking about doing, we have a platform there to work with people and to get to them. And of course, I would have to mention new forms of communication. Cuban people are creative, trying to find alternative solutions for things. So we have internal networks that function as a substitute for when we don't have internet. People, especially young people, play games in private networks. So I'm just putting an example of how people want to connect, even though they don't have what is common in other places like internet, even though the internet is also growing in social networks. But I would have to say that people are not that connected. So if I'm gonna think about using social networks, for instance, I need to be aware that I'm not a priority on sustainable sustainable development, or whatever I'm gonna say about sustainable or responsibility is not a priority for someone who has a limited time in social networks. So I'm putting art here because also art is a growing tool in Cuba to talk about this kind of topics, and I'm gonna talk about it a little bit later. There are some challenges, of course, not just from the communication perspective, but also from the sustainable world, and Yociel was mentioning some of them. We're in a tripping point in Cuba because we have things like sustainable agricultural practices. We have healthy food because many crops in Cuba are organic, but we're not aware of what we have. So if we don't value that and we're not conscious about it, from the minute we can do it different or easier, we're gonna do it. So there's a challenge there. We need like a bigger sense of urgency in changing our projection with a responsible approach. And how we do it. And this is like you said, I'm gonna start with the funny pictures now, because it's about how to personalize it, how to change the sound or what people want to hear, how to change the image to what people want to see. So this is a picture of a climate change project that we did when I was still working with the Antonio Nuñez Jimenez Foundation. And we were working with 2 coastal communities. So we did these workshops trying to figure out what were the challenges and what they knew about climate change, how they related their problems to climate change, and how they wanted to address them and to talk about them. So this is part of the results. These are, we try to promote non-traditional communication. So even though this is a traditional thing like a banner, but we covered it on ice, we were trying to make like a statement from the people. Also trying to promote interaction, because when we participate, if I make you part, like I tried to do with the sound thing I did previously, it feels different. You're not just listening to someone, but you're being part of it, and you're probably gonna remember it easier. So this is another example of a waste management project, and that's a talking bin. It's a bin to put paper to recycle on it, but when children got closer to it, it talked to people. And returning to the social networks and their uses. As part of this Third Paradise project I'm collaborating with, we have developed a strategy in social networks to open a platform. We make a forum once a year where we gather more than 100 institutions, NGOs, artists, cultural projects all together to talk about sustainability and create a common agenda. But from 1 month before, we start asking those same people, what do you want from the forum? Because it's for you, and you can build it, you can design it for yourself. So who do you want to talk to? Who do you want to connect? What do you want to build? And people started answering. So the topics of the forum are from the people. The tools that we use are also from the people. And this is an example. Something like I was saying, you need to put fashion, and fashion goes with the faces. So we wanted to have the topics from the people with their faces. Because you need to know that behind the word there's a person who is willing to go there and respond for that concept that is bringing to the table. So I already presented the project of Pistoletos. Third Paradise is that symbol you see in the back that promotes a balance between opposites, like nature and technology, saying that if they combine and try to find a balance, we're gonna create a harmony in the world. So one of the things we have learned with this strategy in communication is that we get to create awareness, but the real deal is how to engage people, because you can create awareness. If I constantly talk about it, at least the concept is gonna be familiar to you, but how do you engage? That's like the real challenge here. So we need to connect local people through their practices, try to put them together in the same place and try to work together for a common purpose. So the lessons we have learned through these processes of communication for sustainable development is to get local, trying to speak from people's culture. The best you can do is to create the platform for the people that they can express themselves what they need. Highlight their voices, and this is a very good example of how they could have different voice. Young generations are probably gonna say it very differently from other generations, using other codes, technology codes probably. And a challenge is also for communicators to work with those, because if you create that platform, you're gonna have like big input. So the challenge is also how to make that all that in a strategy that makes sense. Because otherwise it's gonna be too much information and it's not gonna be precise. Yeah, and the message is not gonna go through. So another important thing we have learned is that the communication process is not just about what we're saying. We can be working on healthy food, and we can be talking about healthy food, but we're not just talking about it, we're also practicing. Communication is a social practice. So what we do in a communication campaign is also a practice that we're promoting. So this is a pretty good example of how people engage in participation, which is a very tricky concept in Cuba right now. So this is a summary of what I was telling you. To get local, at least for our experience, it's really hard in communication to do all that, to go from what I'm saying to really actually do it, get local, listen and highlight what people say, and create the space, not the content for them. And be aware that the platforms that we promote are not just for the moment itself. So finally, for it to stick, it has to be cool, it has to be fun, it has to be fashionable, especially for young generations that are the ones who are making the decisions for tomorrow. So the challenge for communication in Cuba to talk about sustainable development is to make it a goal, to make it something you want to talk about, not to talk about a problem, but to talk about a goal, something you want to achieve. And this is an example of one of our last campaigns. So this is it. This was the general idea of how communication is in Cuba and the challenges we're facing towards talking about sustainable development.
Many issues, many questions. Address your questions, your comments to one speaker. I would start out by saying, I have not heard a statement, a clear statement of what the problem is. Pollution, what is it? How big a problem is it?
In which? In
Cuba.
In Cuba. No, in Cuba, the problem there are a lot of problems that they're in the same. Pollution, it's a problem, but the good side that we have not a big industrial develop is that the industrial pollution we have not. But the sewage pollution, contaminated water body, it's a big problem. All the water body, rivers and bays and things. But the solid waste management, it's a big problem in Cuba. Even they are not a big plastic production or the big plastic use, it's a problem. But the main problem, it's not the problem that we have. It's the perspective that I want to do. It's the problem that we will have in the future that everybody want. It's how to be, how to develop without a gap of economical differences, but protecting the natural resources. For me, and you know, I'm not accept already now. They are not an article talking about Cuban economy or about economy if they don't mention natural resources. How will participate the natural resources in the economical plan, and how we will keep the good things on, how we'll keep that, but protecting natural resources. In Almendares River, that one that I talked, was a big work, but mainly because we were working with people, changing the consumption patterns, demonstrating that there are other ways to do things. And what I says is that the way to protect the environment is changing economical system and financial system. We cannot reproduce the same economic system that they are everywhere, and the financial. We have the possibility. Be so bad, it's a good opportunity to change things in the right way.
So waste disposal is a big
Waste disposal and the waste management.
and the river
Almendares River is very polluted, but in all the years that I was,
remains polluted.
but not so. In 1995, Almendares River was what technically known like a dead river. Already now, not is a dead river, but still it's polluted.
So that's common people disposing of waste, throwing.
Waste and sewage.
So the production processes, examples.
The production process, but the organic matter, the 75% of all the sewage without any kind of treatment go to a river or to the sea without no treatment. That is a problem.
I really like how everything in this panel fits together. I want to ask Gaby a question. I'm in the environmental movement here and in this country, and we're always struggling to find out what is the issue that will motivate people to take action. If one thing above all others seems to be a lot of people care about the health of their families, their kids. What are you finding is actually a motivating issue that will get Cubans to take action on the environment?
I'm debating, but I would have to say food. Food, it's a very tricky thing because it has to do with patterns of consumption, and we're dealing with that right now. People in Cuba, from the moment they start changing their income, they don't eat healthier. The opposite. It's the opposite. So it's like a struggle. People start drinking more sodas and changing their pattern for worse when it should be for better. Because if you ask them why they don't eat healthy, they tell you their income is not enough to eat healthy because it's not cheap. But when they do have more income, they don't. So it should be food because it's in everybody's mindset to talk about food.
Can I just follow that up? How are you finding communication with children? You had some beautiful pictures of very young children responding on climate change, but is that really an important focus of your communications? Do you find younger people, really young people, sort of responding to environmental issues?
They responded at that time because we were working on that topic, but it's not on their daily thoughts. So what we did with that community, for instance, was to give them like basic tools of photography, and we asked them to share how they identify climate change related to their community. So they had to look at their places with a different perspective. They had to think about it, and from that point on, they were more engaged with the idea of what was going on with their community and climate change. But it's not a common thing for people to talk about it, even though they live in places that are that have problems with related to climate change.
To a considerable extent, the campaign, the movement for sustainability is a top-down rather than bottom-up. You have a new sector of organizations, yours and others, which is trying to raise consciousness and show practices. Can you describe the full network, networks, the other groups?
Yeah, on the environment there are some NGOs, like there CIERIC is an NGO that work a lot like us with the new business, because are practical, they are not time to talk about everything. For us it's very important, and we are trying and that the government allow us to work with private sector, not mainly in demonstrate that they are and on topics like, like corporative social responsibility, but not because you do a check mark, we are working with corporative social responsibility. It's because if they really incorporate in the way of management the business some element of that, some element of protecting energy in all the, a business have a lot of supplies, a lot of equipment, and how we are having a lot of some successful working with private sector, mainly restaurant, cafeterias, renting houses, and there are other organizations like CIERI that have been working in cultural levels, Felix Varela Institution, different NGOs that work on that. And of course, the Minister of Environment and Science and Technology and Environment, it's a long name, have the policies and the programs and institution. They are the Institute of Ecology Systematica, the Ecology and Systematica that work a lot on that. The Institute of Geography work just in a lot in studying the environmental impact of different action in Havana. And really, there are a lot good policy, good plans. Now is very well known La Tarea Vida, is the task force Vida, that it's organized all the environmental problems and all the action against climate change that should be doing Cuba. The thing is that mainly focuses on governmental actions. That is okay. It's a new task force of the government and it's governmental, but they're different. But we need more practical things. Focus again, and I repeat again and again, focus on conscience, but from economy and how to organize. There are many different, the topic of new economies and new possibility. I learned here in Bard College. It's the first time that I received a new knowledge and new concept of new economy. And I always says that Cuba already now is the perfect lab for all innovating idea on new economies, on new financial system. Cuba is the perfect lab, better than here. And we need to continue speaking of it.
My question before Yociel to begin with, and you can always pass it on. Mm-hmm. This is going to build on some of the conversations that we've had before. So Cuba is the ecological crown jewel of the Caribbean. Marine protection, coastal marine protection, I think, is one of the greatest untold stories and is a model around the world. Coral reef systems, the envy of the world. We're at this moment in time where, as you talked about, the rush to investments, foreign investments in tourism. What do we need to do over the course of the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years? Is it a legal process? Is it part of the constitutional process? Before there's Chinese investments, European investments, and diving in the gardens of the Queen. So you think about all these things. So what realistically, in terms of the work that we do together, in terms of the work that we do with the Cuban government, what do we need to do? So it's not too late. So all of a sudden, there's not this massive economic development on the coastline, which destroys these ecosystems.
Yeah, I think that questions will be good that each of us answer a little bit because it's three aspects. My personal opinion and person that have been living in Cuba for all life, traveling a lot, studying abroad, everything, but I decided, I don't know why ni when, I decided to live in Cuba. It's a big question in my life, but I think that until today, I think that it has been a good decision. But the first thing is beginning practical processes, actions to change the mind, because it's how approach that problem. Your focus is perfect. We are pristine, nature, pristine. But the problem is that we have pristine way of thinking too. And we need practical things to change the mind, not only with blah, blah, blah. In Cuba, we are full of blah, 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 And the thing is, for example, a practical example, what to do when some of the marine ecosystem, very important, that feature community have been living from that. And now you go there, it's one of my projects, go there and say, hey, you have to stop fish here. And what that community do? You know what? They, of course, they will do that illegal, without permission, because of the coral reef. And the thing is that people like us need to rethink what social, from where they will obtain their incomes. Not try to move out the community or says you are a fisherman, now you are a farmer. Their families, a tradition like 5 generations that they don't know how to plant something. They have been fishing all their life, you know? And that you have to change the mind at all levels, demonstrating things. It's the small projects that we have been developed from foundation and doing, it's demonstrating there in Cuba, there are a lot of people doing right things. Of course, there are more people doing bad things. There are a lot of people doing good things, and even when they don't know how to do both. When you explain a pig farmer that have 5,000 pig, that you need not only stabilization point, that there are other way to management the pig farms. You say, yes, nobody told me before, and we go there, explain how to share the profits, how to implement, you know, the food process, the wastes of the pig and the food of the pig. They do everything, but if nobody explain him that they are modern way to management the business, they do like everything, like other things.
To what extent is the constitutional process, the writing of a new constitution, incorporating many of the ideas you and others are raising? Are you happy with that, or are you unhappy with that?
You want to go? Oh, should I? Well, like you said, it's a good idea that we all give our perspective, because it's not just about making like the legal system before the moment, that moment we don't have occurred, but also create awareness in people and conscience about what the future of Cuba is going to be. In the constitutional process now, one of the things some people are talking about is to declare rights of the earth. So their animal rights and rights of the earth, in search of that balance we were talking about earlier. But it's not yet in the project. So it's something some people are saying, but it's not yet in the project. And another thing is that I think could be related to that is that now with the new project we have the possibility of as citizens, and maybe you can explain it with more information, of making a demand of an institution that could be damaging something, an ecosystem, for instance, something that I couldn't do before. So it's giving people power. The thing is, I don't think people are aware of that. But if that stays in the Constitution, that gives people power to talk about how they want their environment to be handled. So they know they have a responsibility too, because it's theirs, and they have the power to make the law apply as it should and make institutions work as they should.
That's the word that I was saying. We have in our constitution we recognize that we have to protect the environmental, but in this case the new constitution is talking about demand with the people, with the against the people, against the company that's broke the law in case of environmental protection. And this is a good step for a start, because this is the law of the land. And join to the question of Michael, is not only about caution. You have to give people information, and people respect the law. If you try this kind of matter in the law, in the Constitution, environmental law, in our criminal code, people will be more careful about protecting environmental.
It's more than people, it's the old state enterprises, big polluters, and
Yes.
possibly the new foreign investors on the coastline. So who is controlling, regulating those sectors?
Well, we have the Minister of the Science and Technology, Environmental and Technology, is give the general policies that the rest of the government have to take in account when it's about environmental protection. But the lawmakers in Cuba, our General Assembly, is that make the law, and also the different ministers in their own field. That's
You raised the question of the seashore. Is that a big problem?
Well, I mean,
Not yet.
Already now, no.
not now, but
Not now, but
Not yet.
you look at,
But
the
what-
9 major core reefs.
what you were saying, it's of course, it's a problem that we will have just tomorrow, because it's very attractive.
Yeah.
And the exploitation sometime of protecting area is not, they are not, now it's coming in Jardines de la Reina. For example, they allowed already now only 20 people a day visit, doing scuba diving. That is one of the 5 more important coral reef in the world, more good care, pristine coral reef in the world. After, how you control, and they have to control that they don't increase the amount of people visiting or doing scuba diving a day. And it's okay, it's control, but mainly it's, again, repeat, we need try to find alternative economical subjects in those parts, because if the problem is money, they will allow just put it 100 people a day there. You need other industries, not potential that a lot of people are uncontrolled. That's.
So many questions. Manuel,
I think some,
alto, hombre.
yeah, some places, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
I will try.
Well, I'm thinking of Quinta de los Molinos.
Uh-huh.
Very good program, right? I
Yes,
think they are successful.
yes,
You have Televisión Cerdana.
yes.
Allá también, they are successful too. And maybe many others that I am not aware of.
Yes,
And then, el Centro de los Adolescentes.
yes,
of Havana.
yes.
I think sometimes, it's actually, reaching the community for different programs. And I was wondering, when you were talking about, let's say, other organizations you're in contact with, are you in contact with all of them? How are you working that? Quinta de los Molinos, Televisión Cerdana, whatever.
Yes, of course. I said many organizations, and I cannot mention all, but I mentioned in the general statement that there are many people doing the right things. For example, last June, we organized a fair of environmental friendly products and services. You was there. And in September, Gaby organized private entrepreneur for sustainable development, some fair that everybody go there to show what they are doing. And for me, it was a big surprise when I organized in June a big fair of environmental friendly business, that there are a lot of people doing good things. They are like hand manufacturing soap. They are producing. She was with other 2 friends, carpenter, doing furniture with pallets. And there are many people doing that. There are a lot of people that they want to care the environment. They want to participate, but sometimes they have not enough information and enough support, because already now, like Yordanka says, the tax system don't motivate do that. That you will reduce your tax if you do that or that. That needs increased motivation and the support of the government and the information. But there are many, in Quinta de los Molinos is a project from the Office of the Historian, They are doing a lot of very good things, a lot of environmental things, and in different provinces there, but still we have to prepare for the moment that you have been describing, Michael, and that we have to prepare. But again, I think that it's the moment to be explaining and doing practical actions to create a new economical model and mainly financial model. Because already now the banking system in Cuba is reproducing the same system that you have here, at different scale, of course. You know, that loans or credits for the credit don't incentive any other attitudes. And it's just you give me that, the percent of something. And there are a lot of very good examples here. I know the social innovation or the social investment. There are different aspects that we are the perfect lab to introduce and to apply all those concepts that even here are very new, but those will develop those ideas better than here.
Yeah, but talking about the organizations, I think we still need to promote the creation of other organizations, because that diversity, especially in civil society, that diversity is gonna guarantee that different practices with people are being made, because it's not the same approach the state, the one of the state, from the Antonio Nuñez Jimenez Foundation approach with working with communities or tackling a subject of sustainability. So that diversity, we're still lacking of it, and it's like the good cop, bad cop thing. It's gonna be like better for everybody to improve what the work we're doing.
You know, one of the things that we have become aware in the U.S. in recent 15 years, increasingly, is the tremendous impact of sea rise on South Florida, the Carolinas.
Miami's gonna be gone.
It's going to be gone?
Miami will be gone in 50 years.
Yeah, okay.
Don't fly.
Okay, they are no problem. They will find a solution.
So to what extent are
They move out to Cuba.
to what extent are Cuban cities sitting low like Florida,
Yeah, many.
vulnerable to this sea rise phenomena?
Yeah, there are many. In Camagüey, mainly
I don't see much awareness. I don't hear about much awareness in Cuba.
they are, and already now the government have been beginning a process that I'm not 100% agree with the process. We support, we try help in that process to move out some community. Just from now, the community of La Paloma and Camagüey, South Camagüey, was moving like 25 kilometers inside.
Júcaro is about to.
Júcaro too, it's more, and Júcaro was social problems. Yeah, because mainly the cost that is more affected in the sea rise, it's the south coast. It's more like sur, and their process, they're in a map very well determined what community will have problem and in what time. But right now there are two communities that I know that have been changing. But you know, those people that live in some kind of small houses near to the sea, when they give an apartment in a building, they don't want to move it out. They say, okay, that the sea come and will be, and we are doing some proposal to build some houses in pilot, no?
Is it possible,
in pilot.
is it possible that the new hotels are being overbuilt in Marrero and other places?
Yeah,
Too many hotels overbuilt.
They are always they are on risk. They are planned that protect the duna of the sand of Varadero Beach and other beaches, because the duna protect a lot the rays of the sea.
But that might decrease.
Yeah,
The old timer tell you that.
But yeah. But it's already now in that case, in the last 5 years, really, honestly speaking, there are a lot of governmental action that have been stopping a little bit. Our role is of civil society organization and good people is to be complement the good idea, the other idea, like with work environmental education, trying to change the sound of those things that we should do it from low perspective, because in Cuba, like a lot, the law is only just to punish, like Yordanka says, but we have to use it. We have to well know the law to use it in how I want. I don't know very well all the aspects of the law. I have to know well to apply all the changes in the economical organization of small enterprise. I'm doing that now. Something is asking.
I was just going to say that the term we use in English is we use the law to create incentives and disincentives.
That's good.
So you create an incentive by adopting certain laws and rules to encourage certain behavior, and disincentive, for example, taxes on liquor and cigarettes, so people don't.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Incentive and disincentive.
Yeah.
She had her hand up for a long time.
Yeah, Gaby, I think that you have a very tremendous task as an environmental communicator. My question is, if we think in the word environmental and we think about the word nature, nature is as it is, the planet, and turns environment when it interacts with human beings, right? So how is the plan, or have you thought about reverse the massive effect of media and commercials to twist the natural connection with the environment? Like you spoke about the increased consumption of sodas and versus having juice from natural fruits. How you are looking into this context to reverse that massive impact that people will prone to consume sodas, for instance, rather than keep it in the natural way?
Well, the good thing about Cuban context now is that there is not a big wave of advertisement like in other places. So products are there, but you're not fully, constantly pushed with advertisement to buy. So it's not a consumer society, not a big consumer society. But one of the approaches I think would work to make interesting the proposals of a sustainable living is the partnership with art and the idea of making it cool, making like a good thing to look for, something that maybe even I have thought about it and I have my contradictions, but I think it could be like something that could differentiate someone as an interesting person because it's a responsible person. You know what I mean? It's an added value for a person to be like that. If we put it like that, maybe people will start to consider it and focus on that way of living.
And the reason, I'm sorry, is just to finalize your answer is what I find in common, that you three has spoken about raising conscious. So where's the human factor into that? I just let it there. So can't think. Where is the human factor?
Everywhere. It's the human factor that.
Because when we say I know, but
Yeah.
when we say raising conscious, where is the switch, the trigger to really make that permanent conscious to engage in a positive way? Environmental protection.
Yes.
Well,
Thank you.
it
So the
starts with
question-
information.
Yeah, no, but I don't know if they have the answer, so.
No. It's that you gave the answers. It's for the human factor. It's what we are working on from different perspective to change the mind. You know, the human factor is always, and of course all the things that we think that we want to change. We are working with the human factor, and it's mainly, you know.
No, that's why you see so many good results in children, because they're in a formation moment. So it starts with the information and how are they gonna the hierarchy, they're gonna give to certain informations and certain behaviors. So that's like something to look for, because other people, you can work with them, but you're not gonna have the same results because they already have the hierarchy formed, and it's harder to change that.
But to me, your question raises the question of agency, human agency. Are we talking about the minds of all of us, citizens, government, civil society, the media, all of the above?
That's right.
Pretty complex.
She wants to do it.
No, you have to wait. You have to, John.
Hi, how are you?
Last night I went to the big solidarity rally for the president up at Riverside Church.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was obviously a very left audience, and
Yes.
it could have been,
We are too.
John, what was the question?
well, the question is what your general sense is. I mean, I was gonna say that what struck me was one of the emphasis points that he made was October 10th as the 150th anniversary of Céspedes' leadership. I mean, it was going into a deeper part of Cuban history, and he talked about the support that came from the US for that. It was an interesting theme for him to hit on. But that I just set up as a lead on to the question. He's met with high-tech US investors. He's meeting with big tourism people. Do you have a sense that what he is going to be doing, the kinds of changes that a new leadership brings to a society, do you sense a more sympathetic and open ear to what Nuñez Jimenez has been struggling to do for many years and what other people are doing in the university? I mean, do you have a sense of a different generation and an awareness that helps to magnify what you're doing and thinking about?
So right here.
Yeah. But no, my question is, you asked him about that?
No, it was there was no asking.
We're not asking, but will be.
The new generation.
Yeah, will be good that you ask him in order that you tell us. You know, because it's difficult that guy made a concrete proposal. You know? But it's okay, the new generation. Mauricio said that you have.
I think well, actually, the constitutional process is giving you kind of like an answer. There's a big popular council, so ears are wider, I think. But it's not just the new president's philosophy. It's something that had already started before he became president. So I think there is an opening in that sense, but I don't think he is the main push. It had already started.
You have an age transformation in the Central Committee. You have lots of changes at lower and middle leadership levels. And I don't know, I mean, you can see that either as people who are going to go whole hog for a Vietnamese model or a Chinese model, or, I mean, you're speaking to something that's very different. And I'm wondering whether you're here, have a sense that there's a responsiveness to that among the people who are trying to, I mean, you eloquently laid out what the objective problem is of the economy. I mean, is your solution being listened to in government more than at this point? That's the...
Rápido, pues el tiempo se nos acaba.
Just one thing. It's not casually that I was giving a talk here like 18 years ago.
18.
No, 16 years ago in 2002. Here.
Milner.
Huh?
El centro nuestro.
Aquí?
Yeah.
I was here 16 years ago.
Milner Center.
Milner Center. Here, 16 years ago. My first visit to New York. And now I bring with me two specialists, and colleague that they have the same age that I was when I was here. And that it's my responsibility in that case was the responsibility of Mauricio that accept that the 31, 32 years old guy come here and like now, he accept that. But it's an act of responsibility that share and give voices and have in account what the young people thinks. And it's not casual that they are here. It's because we were talking, and again, this center allowed that, and I proposed that. And it's the same in Cuba. Of course, Cuba have very good things. Still, it's not so like in a plan, like in a program, that we need other perspective of the same idea. I don't want to change the ideas. I just want to change that they accept that they are other way to implement the same idea. I don't want inequalities. I don't want just high consumption, but what I want is first that they have a clear program of what you want, because it's impossible that if 7 years ago, 8 years ago, they opened broadly the private sector, and now they're closing the private sector. They are reducing the license. And what is your color of what? You know, it's the problem because there are people, a lot of people in the private sector doing a very good things, and now you will says that you need to reduce it. And the only thing is that the president, of course, is a fresh face. It's always is good because the first things that is very good that at least was it's a change. The first moment in 50 a lot of years that changed the president.
Sure. I came in a little late, so I apologize if you covered this already. It sounds like you're kind of going in this direction about generations. I'm an agriculture teacher for high school students in public school. I taught in Queens, New York for 5 years. I live upstate, just drove 2 hours to be here, so that's why I'm late. And I teach high school students in my neighborhood now. It is not very common to have agriculture programs at schools, but it is not uncommon for them to exist, several within a state, multiple within a state. There's the largest student-run organization called the FFA is an agricultural-based program for agriculture students in public schools, not private schools, not specialized schools, in public schools. And I think this is a really big deal. So my question is, and I absolutely love what you wrote up here because making sustainable development fun, cool, fashionable. Because I teach agriculture, oftentimes we have a wide diversity of students, both in the city and where I am now. A lot of families come from Central and South American families who think that farming and agriculture is dirty, low work, and they brought their families to America to improve their situation. What is so wonderful about what's happening right now is sustainable is cool, at least in the United States. I was in Cuba for a week in August, and I only got a tasting. But the idea is that there's a lot going on. I was able to visit a sustainable farm in Vinales. They had tour people coming through. I'm thinking about taking my students, trying to organize a group of high school students to go to Cuba maybe next year. But my question is, are the primary and secondary levels of students getting taught about sustainability? I veer more on the side of agriculture, sustainable agriculture in general, and comparing and contrasting conventional and organic type things. But is it part of the program that students at any age during their first 12 years or several years of schooling get? Or is there any specialized situation for that?
No. There are some small examples that in the subject of El Mundo en que Vivimos, they are general subject in primary school, secondary school.
They have a practical exercise to with crops at schools.
Yeah, so small.
Gardens where they.
But the way of planting and the way the classical one, it's very simple.
Yeah,
it's not
my daughter's
big.
8 and they learned how butterflies hatch and how to
That's
bees
right.
sprout and stuff like that. But I guess I'm just wondering if there's room for that. I think education seems to be pretty.
Of course,
small,
there.
And that might be a good, I know we're talking about right now, but you know, the young people are growing up pretty fast, and in 5-10 years, there'll be multiple, hopefully of folks like you. And so part of what I do is trying to empower young students and make sustainability and agriculture cool, because there's all the headlines are about GMOs and drones and everything that we are seeing these days. Sustainability, going green is old, but these are buzzwords that young people are coming across, even if their parents seem to care more than they do. And I just think, I don't know, I'd like to talk more.
Maybe even organize a session in Havana with her and others
Yeah.
to discuss that cohort that could be
Yeah,
the generational issues.
yeah, I think there's a lot.
He's inviting you to go to Havana.
I'm there.
I want to close with one last question. And I'm going back to cities and sea rise and then contamination, pollution. Again, Florida, what we were seeing in the Carolinas, we see also all drainage systems backing up, and then you have contamination, disease,
And
what
drought.
have you. But,
And drought,
yeah.
increase in droughts, government data increase in droughts, so we
So you have a
project out.
counter,
That's gonna be
you
the
have
other thing.
Havana,
Talk about that
you
too.
have Havana that is turning 500.
You think?
That's Ciudad de Havana.
See? I know.
Y Santiago is even older,
Yeah, la tierra caliente.
and there are others that are also so. My question is, are they sitting too low, and are we about to witness an interaction of waters rising and then hitting the sewer systems? And there are beaches in Florida that you cannot use anymore,
I know.
contaminated. Oh, you can use them after they clean them, right? Random
Yeah, I don't
beach.
think sea level rise is as much of a threat to Cuba as it is to Miami, just based
That would
on.
be my question in terms of the old cities, Havana, 500.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it's not a big threat already now. I don't know if there a big catastrophe or something like that will be, but nothing in Havana. It's mainly in South Coast in some points. That is a perfect story saying that. But the problem of increase of the sea level, not is only by city. It's because all the other implications that that will have, not only on the urban or on the population. It's some industry, how will be changing the ecosystem of the sea, the featuring industry. It's other implication. It's not only the city that is problem, but it's and the air, the high level of temperature. It's affecting Cuba, mainly we humans, but all the productions in agriculture, the production of agricultural products, it's affecting a lot, and the quality of soil. There are a lot of topics to talk. No, I don't want to talk about soils, but the soil and the water.
Yeah, soil degradation.
We're closing.
Okay.
Hermes, Havana. So a big round of applause, please.